Welcome to Exploring Glorantha. I am Jam. We have been plagued by chaos demons, but we seem to be doing well. Evan, as always, my co-host. Let's see if people can hear you now.
Okay. Hopefully, people can hear me now. Hi, everyone.
Excellent.
Uh, Welcome to Exploring Glorantha. And we were going to get to give me a chance to toot my own horn
Let's
for a
talk
little bit
about Red
more.
Moon and Warring Kingdoms real quick here at the start, and then we'll get into
Absolutely.
our topic. Again,
Excellent.
apologies for the technical issues this morning.
I blame the Mastali actually and their Nilmergs and Gremlins, but whatever. Um, Red Moon and Warring Kingdom came out about a week and a half ago.
Hmm.
Um, we are over 400 downloads. You won't see medals on it because it's a free product. Yes, that's right, free. Um, you will in the near future be able to buy a print-on-demand version of it. We are getting sort of the last feedback on typos and other things that need to be clarified so that, before you get a print version, it is the very best that we can make it from, many hundreds of eyes having been put on it and found little mistakes. But it is 340 pages of Gloranthan goodness. Um, and I'm I'm humbled to say six five-star reviews, a five-star rating and a four-star rating, and Mr. or Mrs. Four-star. If you come back and write a full review, that would be great, so that we can learn from your insights and your impressions on the product. But in any case, it is now out in the world, and I'm very happy that I'm happy that it's over, but I'm also happy for its reception and that people seem to find some interest and value to it. And the illustrations alone by Patricia Baker are just amazing. And
Spectacular. Yeah, it's
and
an amazing book. You should be super proud of it, Evan.
well, thank
I
you,
am thrilled for you.
thank you. Well, you will see things you have never seen in Glorantha before, never before illustrated, and it's just a joy to have put out in the world, and it's out there now, free to download the PDF for as long as the Johnstown Compendium exists. So
I have to rewrite my review because I basically gave you I wrote up a 5-star review as if you were putting out an illumination manual to essentially hoodwink everyone who read it into becoming members of the Lunar Way. And then I thought that may not be actually useful on the Johnstown compendium. So I will write an actual review. And I mean, I've given you my feedback over the years. I love this thing. I'm so excited that Tim and Trisha kind of helped shepherd this forward for you. And this is a monumental work. I mean,
it's very nice of you to
I
say.
think it doubles or almost doubles the amount of 13th Age Glorantha content currently out in the world.
Uh, I don't want to sell short the other things that my escalation
No,
of
no, no.
companions have put out, but yes, it certainly adds a great deal, and is on par with the size of the original 13th Age Glorantha book.
And there is hope that we're going to get a print on demand version.
Yes, yes, no, more than a hope, a certainty. We
Excellent.
we are the devil is just in the details, finishing up and making sure that we have the most correct copy.
The devil is under the block, Evan. Come
Well,
on.
yeah,
You
part
should
of him
know
is
that.
under Pavis.
I mean, sure. All right, let's get into. I mean, this is our fourth part of our high level look at the Second Age. I have no defense, but we're going to cover here kind of what the God Learners have been up to, and then sort of the end of the Second Age and why this is important for our Third Age
Yeah,
games, and then
yeah.
lucky us, we're going to be going into the third age, and that means Evan will be being returned to his hole, where he will put together the outlines for our third age show. So let's
Okay.
talk about the God Learners. We
All
set
right.
up who the God Learners were. We set up what they were doing in the Middle Sea Empire. We set up and talked about last time what the Empire of Worm Friends were doing, those fork-tongued devils. And now we are going to look at the God Learners. And what's one of the things that's really interesting to me about the God Learners is a lot of people who I have spoken with about Glorantha really want to say, well, it's just a Joseph Campbell sort of interpretation of myth. And I think that does it a disservice because while yes, Greg Stafford loved Joseph Campbell and was heavily influenced by him, he did not approach myth making in the same the monomyth is the hammer and the only hammer that I have, and I will use it to beat every myth into submission, into the forge, into the shape of the monomyth that Campbell did. And in fact, if you do a study of Glorantha, which luckily for you, we both are doing, what you actually find out is the people who are most like Joseph Campbell's Heroes of a Thousand Faces, The Power of Myth, The Masks of God, are the God Learners. And they are definitely not the heroes of this tale. And so the God Learners, I mean, they even use the same term, the mono myth. This idea that all myths are essentially one myth, and that we can start picking and choosing and reshaping, not just, I'm doing a long series of this on Behind the Screen, not just using the myths of the cultures, but using myths to create cultural changes that we want to see to make certain cultures more palatable to us, or to bring them, in synchronicity with what we're doing in the Middle Sea Empire, or to cripple them. I'm going to turn this over to Evan to talk a little bit about the monomyth before I go off on my going to assemble my soapbox, set it
There you
down, and
go.
get up on my screed.
Yeah. Well, so the the spiritual, intellectual background and driving force of the Middle Sea Empire or the Juristelli Empire are the God Learners,
Mm-hmm.
and um, they are a lot of times, very right. They are very close to um, a lot of truth in their assembling of the monomyth. And the reason that it doesn't disappear, even as the empire disappears, is because it does explain a lot about the world, but it doesn't explain everything. They thought that they were going to find the unified field theory of mythology, and be able to, wield ultimate power from it. And they wielded great power, and they did great and terrible things with it. Um, and as we talked about at the beginning, as their empire rose, their understanding of mythology allowed them to manipulate the mythic world and bring it into the real world to obliterate the Wertagi.
Yeah.
And they brought a sky god of water, and water in the sky is fire, and and they at the Battle of Tanian's victory, they wiped out the monopolists of the sea to give themselves and others, free range across the oceans. There were some, collateral damage. There are still things called firebergs, um, that are like icebergs, but they're on fire, around, sailing around the sea, and causing, great damage, like it's like the fallout of that. Um, but they saw the commonalities, and first they used them as a way to unite and to understand a world spanning empire. But they also cynically manipulated it and used these understandings, to their own, power mad, greedy ends as well. But uh, nonetheless, this understanding was a lasting achievement, and something that, their contemporaries, they had encounters that weren't just fighting the EWF, although they were imperial rivals for power. But they also had information exchanges, and part of the reason that the information about the monomyths survived the cataclysm at the end of the Second Age is that they were recorded by in Empire Wormsfriend sources as well, and carried on and survived. So um, they 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 never sort of surrendered to the fact of the greater mystery of the God time, that it just wasn't possible to fully systematize something where events are non-sequential, where there's a simultaneous nature to things. They were convinced that certain deities were the same deities,
Mm-hmm.
and they went back and were repeatedly told, "No, I'm not that deity," by the deity. Um, Particularly Ernalda and Dendara are two earth goddesses, but Dendara is really absorbed into the light pantheon. And they were like, these are two earth empresses, they're both married to Yelm, got to be the same goddess. No, the truth of the mythology was stranger than they could comprehend in some ways.
There
Um,
are more things
yeah.
under heaven and earth, Horatio, than are dreamt of by your philosophy god learners. And the problem that
Yes.
we encounter here is in Glorantha, myths don't just define culture; myths define reality.
Yeah.
And so when the god learners go poking about the other people's myths, and they encountered the fact that most people in Glorantha, they don't really care about other people's mythic beliefs. They only care about theirs,
Right.
because that's what defines their reality. We talk about, kind of on a societal level where they're like, well, hey, we do these, these rites in spring so that the rains come. We do these in the fall. We do, these are our high, feast days. This is the cycle of our year. But that cycle of the year reinforces the local reality, because these gods are summoned. They are constantly reliving their lives through the god time during hero quests. So when you mess with the myths, again, like I'm saying, you're not just messing with the fabric of a culture, you're literally damaging the fabric of reality.
And that um, there is a sort of natural process to that, to a certain extent, which I think the Godliners observed, that um, there was an ebb and flow of power. We talked about, when we talked about our first age,
Mm-hmm.
the in Darahapa, for example, at the end of the Gods' War, the horse cultures there controlled things, but then the first council drove out the horse riders, and they became, ultimately the Pentons, and the more urban, Dara happens that become or that return to the Yelmic culture with an imperial sun worshipping elite, um, reasserted itself, um, and um, sort of remade the reality, the contest between what the dominant myths were uh, made change on the ground. But the God learners didn't just want to contest; they wanted to get behind the scenes and change the rules of the game.
Yeah.
Um, uh, all to always be in their favor, and they figured out all sorts of very clever, very dangerous, very damaging things to do.
Well, and like one of the ways they did that is with their encyclopedic knowledge of with the God learner maps, which well,
Yes.
when we get back to the end of the episode and talk about why this is so important to Glorantha, a God learner map is both an amazing plot hook to give your players and a whole heck of a lot of rope to just keep feeding your players as they use it until finally, uh, you know, they hang themselves with it. But the other thing is the I would say one of the longest lasting legacies of the God Learners, as it relates specifically to Gloranthan gaming, is they take what Arcat kind of pioneered in the experimental hero quests and they refine it to a point that when your players go out and want to do something crazy with a hero quest, 8 times out of 10, they're probably following in the paths that the God learners cut in this previous age. We just had a message from Commissar Alexander. Good morning. Oh, excellent. They're binging our videos on Glorantha and waiting for their copy of the Gloranthan sourcebook. Welcome. That's fantastic.
Excellent. We are all us. Um, uh,
Violence is always an answer.
so, yeah, what the God learners do is they seize all of the Arcadi knowledge that they can get their hands on, um, and which was sort of esoteric and diffused among the followers, and then the sort of cultic uh, um, remainders within the Dark Empire, and they approach it very systematically. They approach it in a very Western way. They try to systematize it. They take the esoteric and they make it in some ways almost industrial. And instead of a small band of heroes sort of journeying, occasionally, they set up teams to go to the other side and to explore and to just to systematically try to map, take the blueprints that they steal and from the Arcadi after their conquest of Ralios, and try to explore every nook and cranny to understand it, and they feel with some justification. Ultimately, it's flawed, but that by understanding, by controlling this knowledge, they have almost unlimited control over the flow of magical power,
Mm-hmm.
the effect of myths on the real world, um, and and because of many early successes, they become very and ignoring the failures, they become more and more arrogant and more um, uh, extreme in the things that they will try to do.
Well, and what they start to I mean, they start messing with things that they should probably never have messed with. They are changing cultures and nations' myths to rewrite the patterns of their souls and their dreams. We
Yeah.
are seeing, what they start to see after years and centuries of doing this. Hey, what was cyclical and uncategorizable, we're starting to wear new paths and impose a structure on to the god time as mortals, and they were seeing permanent, semi-permanent um, changes to the nature and landscape of the hero plane because of their power, their arrogance, their hubris, which led to the goddess switch.
Yeah. Yeah, this is the classic uh cautionary tale, um where uh uh, as Jeff Richard put it in a post, um, let's take a goddess, the grain goddess of a particular land that we've conquered, but damn, we really hate spelt. Can't we move the spelt goddess to Central Ralios and move the nice wheat goddess to Slantos? um, it's probably more complicated than that. It's not just a preference for the particular kind of grain, but also, a Jeff Goldblum in Jurassic Park thoughts, spent so much time thinking about could they do it? They never stopped to think about should
Should
they
they
do
do it?
it?
Yeah.
And so they using the traveling to the other side, encountering, divine beings, they which from uh the Western belief system, they just see as very powerful spirits,
Mm-hmm.
that the human being, through the use of logic and reason, can directly interact with the runes, and the offspring of these ultimate powers are just more and more diminished beings, maybe of great power, but they don't believe them to be gods because they believe only that the one deity is the invisible god. um and so they essentially befuddle these two goddesses and convince them that they actually reign over different territories than they organically developed mythologically to govern. And at first, of course, it works out great. Suddenly wheat grows great in Slantos, and those Rallians can eat spelt and it's fine, but that does not last very long. And
No,
uh,
I mean, Slantos
uh,
suffers horribly, right? Because these are not just goddesses that are of the grain, right? It's fertility, it's fecundity, it's everything
yes,
around that. And what we see is marriages failing, you know, uh, plants failing.
right,
It's a complete total breakdown of the earth goddess's role within that culture.
yeah, yeah. Suddenly, marriages can't stay together in Rallios, and it's not just, hey, wheat and spelt aren't growing very well here, but like nothing is growing very well here, and you cause famine, and uh, and uh, so in one place, like the social fabric is completely torn and ruined, and in the
Mm-hmm.
other, the natural world rebels,
Yeah.
causing enormous suffering and destruction. And it's like, oh, well, we learned a lot from that.
Yeah, and their response is, "Oh, well, that's interesting. We didn't expect this. Let's push on." Yes, Jason, exactly. Life, nature finds a way, and cats and dogs living together, mass hysteria. It's the end of the world.
Yeah.
And about this time, I'm going to put it, the God learners get a little high on their own supply, and they're like, "All right, you know what
Yes.
we should do now? Now we should invade Kethaella." And this brings them into direct conflict with the Empire of Wormfriends. There are several battles, counteroffensives, and kind of pushes back and forth that sees an ever escalating conflict with powers that really neither side understands. They have
Yeah.
come to both of these powers through, very cultural and internalized means, but they have warped and reached far beyond um, their safe understanding of these things, right? It's
Yeah.
knowledge that was possessed and in the beginning was earned, but very quickly their ability overstripped their maturity with these powers, and we're going to see it blow up spectacularly.
Yeah. Yeah. And the struggle in Kythella um, really damages ultimately both empires as they sort of go back and forth against one another. The EWF um, has the alliance with the trolls, in the Shadowlands, in the northern part of Kythella at the opening to Dragon Pass. But the Middle Sea Empire, is the premier naval empire. They really seize the coast, and Notchet um, is sort of the crown jewel that they are bickering over. And it does very well in many ways because it's by the end of this period, about 900s, it its population has risen to 100,000 individuals because all of the wealth of the Middle Sea
Mm-hmm.
Empire is funneling in. And even though, of course, the EWF and the Middle Sea Empire are warring over all of the areas that we would now think of in the Third Age as the Holy Country, um, uh, trade is also funneling up. The God learners have spread Isseries across the world, and that sort of neutrality and the fair exchange philosophy of that cult takes things that people would not otherwise have access to. And so, even though the EWF is a very spiritual, very esoteric at the top empire, it still is built on um, very mundane interests and needs, and
Yeah.
so that trade continues even as they fight over territory and resources. Um, the other thing that the Middle Sea Empire finds in that area are the Rutheni of Gods Forgot,
Yes.
um, and a faction of them that is very interested in an experimentation budget that that they get.
Speaking of, do you hear that, Evan? Do you hear that? I think I think it's time to talk about the clanking city.
Ooh,
So
that's right.
the God learners have a radical. Thank you for always rolling with my segues. Um, and yes, Alexander, I would think that is exactly how we could describe both the God learners and the Empire of Worm Friends. So we get this radical God learner sect who is like, you know what would be better? If we could build machines to sort of restore everything to the way it was. And they built uh, Zistal, which is the clanking city. And it is this, I mean, Evan put it beautifully. Like, I had this long winded description of it, but essentially, it's very much this weird Da Vinci punk blip on the Gloranthan landscape where we have ornithopters and automatons and all of this weird stuff. I first came to my understanding of the Machine City during the Second Age supplements, because I believe, if I remember correctly, there was a Machine City
Oh,
supplement during the
yes.
Second Age. Yes.
Yeah.
So Evan, this is, I mean, Glorantha is filled with weirdness.
Yeah.
Ducks, the river cradles, dragon newts. But in this very Bronze Age fantasy setting, we get this very clockwork punk moment.
Yeah.
So why don't you tease this out for us a little bit?
Sure. Well, first I have to make sure that Jeff Richard is the one who sort of originates the Da Vinci punk description. And in some ways, he was sort of pushing it back. There was a little in the Mongoose Second Age
Mm-hmm.
supplement. It was a little bit more, cyberpunk,
Mm-hmm.
steampunk, um, uh, and it went in a direction that I think Jeff and Greg didn't entirely approve of. That might be putting it mildly, but in any case, the idea is that yes, there's this explosion of technological development, something that looks more like the dreams of the Renaissance genius, Leonardo da Vinci, but they are made real and actually as the factory city. I mean, it becomes a city factory that is building the war material that fuels the Middle Sea Empire. So, not just magic swords, although yes, magic swords made at an industrial scale, but also flying machines and sort of tanks and things not that we would conceive of modernly, but the sort of uh, Renaissance level
Mm-hmm.
of imagination, and of course, the culture that has some of that as well are the Mastali, and this was, of course, exceptionally alarming to them that that these humans were sort of moving into their
Mm-hmm.
territory of technology and technological magic, um, and the city became more and more complex, and the idea was to make it fully automated to run itself, um, and it's moving in the direction where Zisterwall, the heart and mind of Zisterwall, will become Zister, the machine god. Now that is just a little bit past the peak. That's a spoiler for coming attractions. Um, but this sect that was empowered by the God learners, um, got to do this magical experimentation because the byproduct of it was uh, things that fueled the God Learners' war machine to fight the EWF and to suppress rebellions in the far-flung provinces that they were encountering. And these machines and magical implements help them counter things like Dream Dragon,
Mm-hmm.
flying cavalry, and Tyrannosaurus Rex, and other dinosaurs that were used as support units for the EWF as it was expanding and seeking to maintain its power.
So if you didn't
Um,
think Glorantha was
yeah,
metal enough,
yeah, Ooh,
we have battles with Renaissance ornithopters versus dragon and dinosaur cavalry in the Second Age. And then
yeah,
Jason, yes, no, unsurprisingly of the Elder Scrolls, because as we've talked about before on the show, Ken Ralston, who huge Glorantha contributor and fan, goes on to do Morrowind and Skyrim.
yeah.
The Mastali are the Dwemer. Just saying. Just saying. Shh. So we get the Machine City. We get the start of conflicts between the EWF and the Middle Sea Empire. We get the radical rewriting and reorganizing of the hero plane. And I know I thought for some reason, probably due to a lack of sleep plus technical issues, that we would be done with the Second Age today. Nope, we've got one more. But
Yeah.
there's some other things that are going on at this time, including, I mean, the thing is sometimes it's very easy to focus on Dragon Pass because that's where everything comes together and where everything clashes and kind of where the original stories came out, right? We've talked about how Dragon Pass is probably, it's the center of Glorantha, and as you kind of move away from it, things start getting sketchier. Um, but we have a new dragon ring ruling in Krowerella. Um, we have more things going on in the east and in Pamatella, but let's talk about the new dragon ring here.
Sure. So, this is another uh, area of expansion. It's like, oh, you got dragons? Oh, we can do some dragon stuff.
We've got one better.
The Middle Sea Empire, um, sort of subcontracted some things. I mean, there were individuals from the West involved in the Middle Sea Empire, but the new Dragon Ring is essentially a combination of sort of local discontents and powerful adventurers that united and actually managed to drive off the true emperor of Krowerella, and um, and they take over and they start to exploit sort of the local mythology and magical power, um, and um, and they really leave behind God learnerism for sort of bastardizing their understanding of the universe and the things that they discover in the East, to enrich themselves magically and materially, um, and they have a pretty oppressive rule, but one that's very friendly, of course, to the Middle Sea Empire. And the Middle Sea Empire has great connections with them, um, and but they never sort of extinguish or completely sort of rewrite the basic underlying mythic truths of Krowerella,
Right.
and the empire, uh, uh, the the surviving imperial court, goes underground and waits for their moment to return and restore order, to their dragon empire. But for a very significant period of time, and at the height of the Middle Sea Empire, Krowerella is open to them. And so you can imagine, even if they didn't fully understand some of the things that they had, stuff from Krowerella went all over the world during this time, because the God learners had sort of an open door into it. Um, and so it's just one more piece of the puzzle that showed the extent and sort of the raw power that they had, even when they lacked the in-depth understanding of to really um, to to really integrate the lessons um, of the combination of the
Mm-hmm.
mythology, the topography, that that made Krowerella and makes Krowerella what it is.
Well, and I think, I mean, we'll talk a little bit more about this next time. And hopefully, the plan is later this month, because this is technically August's Exploring Glorantha that got punted a little bit uh,
Yeah.
here. But we're going to see that all of this sort of comes crashing down in a very horrifying and spectacular way. Not to bury the lead, we're going to see, the Dragon Kill War. And I mean, that line is one of the first lines I ever encountered in reading Glorantha, where it was named not because of what humans did to the dragons, but because of what dragons did during the war. We're going to see the collapse of the Godlearners, the destruction of the Machine City. The end of the Ages of Glorantha are always times of upheaval and great change. I think after we do our third age look, Evan, we should talk a little bit because it's explored kind of, I don't want to say in depth, but it is definitely one of the main touchstones for 13th Age Glorantha, like what's going on at the end of the age and the Hero Wars. And then obviously in King of Sartar, we get some right fragments of surviving out of the Hero Wars.
Yeah. And in the Guide to Glorantha,
Mm-hmm.
um, there are um, there are a lot of hints about sort of what's coming up and the things that herald the Hero Wars, and it does very much tell us that the Hero Wars are the end of the Third Age, um, which means glorious struggle, a time for heroes to rise, but the end of the age is usually a bad thing.
It is usually a bad thing. And yes, Ails and Cures, you are correct. It is the Dragon Kill comes after the corruption of the Empire of Wormthreads, which we're going to talk about.
Yep.
I don't want to say in its entirety because we're not the God Learner podcast, but in a very high level, exploring Gloranthan sort of way.
That's right.
And but like as we always do, I always want to end each episode
Ornithopter view.
the Ornithopter view. I mean, I would rather fly on the back of a dream dragon.
Sure.
I'm just
Yeah.
saying.
Yeah.
If
No, I
I'm in
get
an
it.
ornithopter, I'm looking for worm signs. It's just the way it is for me. How do we bring this back, and why is all of this important to our gaming in Glorantha? And I think kind of the main takeaway for me is in the Third Age, everyone has heard of the God Learners and the EWF, and they stand as these terrifying tales of what not to do. And yet, their influence cannot be understated. Though your characters going out on hero quests most likely have been influenced by God Learner teaching. The Sartorites' love of dragons also harkens back to the Empire of Wormfriends. The bones of Sartar, or the foundations of Sartar, are built on the bones of the God Learners in the EWF. As a GM, I have several notebooks filled with ideas for RuneQuest campaigns, and one of them is uh, a struggling clan attempting to just maintain their place in the world. And as the campaign goes on, what they would discover is the reason their clan is and their clan's lands have always just been this struggle for survival, is that in the Second Age, the God Learners switched their god with someone else. And so the course of the campaign would be, well, who was our god originally? Is there any way we can reverse this and bring prosperity to our people and our land once again? Which I think would just be an amazing campaign arc.
I think that's a great idea. Mine is more straightforward and brute force, but
Yeah,
the machine
you
runes.
put the Will Robinson. You didn't add Will Robinson to the danger, danger, danger.
That's right. That's true. Well, I mean, yes, meddling with things from left over from the God Learners or the EWF is going to be very dangerous. Your common person knows that those people did bad things, and bad things happened to them. No right thinking person is going to go and poke around in EWF or God Learner ruins.
That would be
But
very sinister to do so.
but adventurers they're always doing that stuff.
Right.
Um,
Adventurers
and
aren't in their right minds.
That's right. No. And the ultimate, if you want to play like a death trap dungeon, like go to the machine runes
Yeah.
because we're going to talk about the fall of the machine city, the clanking city, um, next time. But spoiler alert, everything gets broken and destroyed at the end of the second age. And um, is there still stuff there, knowledge, treasure? Almost certainly. Is it really, really dangerous and likely to,
Yes.
have a lot of save or die sort of situations? 100%.
Um, but also things like, I mean, because Jason brought up Elder Scrolls, right? Like the Elder Scrolls and God Learner maps have a lot of parallels, and there's always
Absolutely.
at least one really good quest in an Elder Scrolls game that deals with an actual Elder Scroll. And I think that a community or a temple or a cult that is possession of a God Learner map is an amazing adventure hook. One fraught with danger and peril and the promise of reward on a scale that most adventurers won't see. Because it's a very ambitious adventure to say, hey, here is this fragment of knowledge that could help you rewrite your local hero plane. That takes a lot of, can't use that word, can't use that word.
Gumption?
Chutzpah. Let's do that
Excellent.
on behalf of both the GM and the players to use something like that.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
next time we're gonna go into everything gets destroyed. Welcome to the end of the Second Age. Long live the Second Age. But Jason, I like your request, and I think after we do the Third Age, we could do an episode on the Malchione and on the Dragon Empire, and maybe on Pamatella. Do a small view of the lands beyond Dragon Pass, and do a little trio of episodes of. So you're saying you want more Glorantha,
Yeah. Yeah. Only somebody written something about, like Frenella.
right? See, the best part about this show is again, I'm the Histories initiate. My job is to talk about things. Evan is the Lancor My initiate, and I am very privileged to rest on the shoulders of a giant in the research of Gloranthan material. So I'm the dwarf that gets to see farther because of Evan's stature. So we will see you guys all next month. Evan, any final thoughts on the just over the high point of like we're on the roller
Right.
coaster. Everyone put your hands in the air for the second
Yeah.
episode and we'll
Right. Right. Um, I mean, you can't discount the achievements of these empires, even as you're troubled by their the many mistakes that they make. So many mistakes. Um, but the more that I've looked, the our heroes of the Third Age, our Argrath and even Collier and,
mm-hmm.
and and others, they are um, they are much more attracted to the to the youth, to the EWF, and of course they were centered. Their power was in Dragon Pass, and so
Mm-hmm.
it makes sense. But the the worms friends make me a lot more uncomfortable than the godleaders do, and maybe it's because again, like the like Ormai, the academic approach, the systemization, that kind of understanding of knowledge and application of logic and reason, where the EWF was pointing at some sort of transcendental experience, but one that was like rewriting sort of the base code of not only the landscape but like of all the people in it, and was maybe going to absorb everybody's souls. That makes me, yeah, and maybe that transcendental thing is sort of a more, that mystical approach um, is something that is more alien to just us as modern people.
Yeah.
But it makes me a lot more uncomfortable than
Well, and
than
there's
the
something
God
about the
learners
God
do.
learners that's a very modern mindset as well.
Yes, yes. And and I think a critique of it, I think Greg Safford had a lot of critique of modern society. And so there, in some ways, it's not surprising that the God learners turn out to be thought of as the great villains, even though they achieved a great deal of what the third age is built on.
Well, everyone, thank you so much. We'll be back hopefully in 2 weeks, maybe in three, to finish up the second age. And then I think our third ages will take us into 2025. It's hard to believe that we've been doing this for quite a while, Evan. We're almost on,
Wow.
this was episode 35, I think, or 36. And so, like, we're
30,
about to have our 4 year
36.
anniversary. Yeah. So next episode, we will start into sort of, I mean, not chronologically, because, almost dying put a ding in that. But about, if we're doing them about once a month, we're about to start the 4th year of exploring Glorantha next month, or later
Yeah.
this month. So, guys, thank you so much. Thanks to everybody who was in the chat, Tink and Praetorian and Jason and Ales and Cures and John Doom, who runs just an amazing game of Savage Pathfinder. I'm always grateful to be playing in that game. So until next time, go out and explore some more Glorantha. Get out there and get some gaming in. I hope all of you who have ordered the Glorantha sourcebook, I have mine sitting behind me. Really looking forward to. I'm going to be at GameholeCon next month. If any of you are there, let me know. Like, let's go grab a drink or grab lunch or something. So until next time, stay safe, stay healthy, stay gaming. This is Exploring Glorantha. I am JM, and this is my estimable co-host, Evan. We will see you all next time. And because of the release of Red Moon and Warring Kingdoms, I will say this but once. We are all us.
We are all us.